All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Cindy Teasdale, Executive Director of Prepare.AI, and we're going to give attendees just a couple minutes to arrive, and then we'll get started. So thank you for coming. We're talking about artwork. Stacy, I really admire your artwork.
I love yours too.
Thank you. Mine is a local artist, Alicia LaChance. She's amazing. You can Google her.
I'll find her.
Where did you get yours?
My artist lived in the building for a while, and we met downstairs at the elevator when he was taking some art back up from a showing that he had. So we became good friends, and I bought several of his pieces.
Hey, that's cool.
Lou Monte.
So another St. Louisan.
He started in St. Louis. He's lived in Vegas a lot, most of his life, and then he came back to St. Louis, and I think now he's gone back to Vegas.
So it's the artist journey.
The artist journey.
All right. And who among us are in an art? It looks like you're in a real office.
I am, because we started school back last week, the first in the region to reopen schools in a highly impacted COVID area, so we can be the action research. So we study, we plan, and we do. So I'm here.
That is awesome.
How's it going, Art?
It's going really well, phenomenal. It's going to be a different type of year though, because attendance is going to be spotty.
Yeah.
You have to send home 30% of the kids who say they have symptoms, or they may not come out of fear of high upticks or being around somebody who just got tested positive. So, but other than that, it's going very well.
Good, good.
And Katherine, you look like you're in an actual workspace.
I'm at the Workforce Center today. So
nice to.
Yeah, no students, it's just for business reasons. Some business transactions need to be taking place in the office.
Got it. And Jessi, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm in one of our classrooms at Launch Code. My Wi-Fi has been spotty at home, so I was like, I should probably go.
I may or may not be hotspotting from my cell phone at this very moment. All right, well, we will go ahead and get started. It's 3 minutes past the hour. People are still rolling in, but I will kick things off. So, and sorry, I'm looking over here. Let me switch stuff around. Thank you all so much for joining us today for what I think might be the most interesting conversation we have had so far in these webinars. I'm really excited about this one. If you are not familiar with Prepare.AI, I'm Cindy Teasdale. I'm the Executive Director of Prepare, and I'm here with my colleague, Dave Costanero. Dave, you want to wave? There's Dave. He is our Technical Director. Prepare is a 501c3 St. Louis-based nonprofit. Our mission is to increase collaboration around AI and other fourth industrial revolution technologies in order to enhance the human experience. We have traditionally, since our inception in 2018, done that primarily through a live conference, which would have taken place April 20th and 21st. It is now going to take place over 5 days, 5 different weeks in the month of October. I am super excited about it, and we should be publicizing the dates and getting tickets up in the next week or so. So more to come on that. A couple of quick admin things. So if any of you are having trouble seeing all the speakers, click there's like a grid icon on the top right of your screen, and that should allow you to see everyone. Dave and I today will lead this conversation for the first 45, 50 minutes, and then we will open up to audience Q&A. Feel free to ask questions throughout the session. I know, something will occur to you and you may forget by the end. So you can always just enter your questions in that Q&A panel. We may intersperse some of those questions into the conversation, depending on, how relevant they are. And otherwise we will ask at the end, and we'll ask as many as we have time for. And now we'll get straight into super quick intros and the conversation. So Dave, I'll hand things off to you.
Great, thanks, Cindy. So one quick announcement that we have had a billing change. So in the promotions leading up to this, we were saying that we had Dean Chapman from St. Louis University. Unfortunately, she had a death in the family and could not join us today, but I'm thrilled to share that she found a wonderful stand-in for us. Katherine Cain is the Executive Director of St. Louis University's Workforce Center, which provides employee leadership and organizational development to the St. Louis region and beyond. We also have with us Stacy Hollins, PhD. She's the Assistant Dean of the School of Business at Maryville University, where she oversees cybersecurity, business data analytics, software development, and the Management Information Systems programs. We also have with us Art McCoy, PhD. He's the CEO and Superintendent of the Jennings School District here in the St. Louis metro area. And we have Jessi Wicox, Program Manager of Coder Girl, part of the Launch Code organization. It's a nonprofit that offers free tech education and job placement opportunities. So that's our distinguished panel today. So let's jump in. Art, if I may, let's start with you. You have the widest age variation among the panel in this educational space. How did you all decide how to handle the different ages and the educational needs in primary school versus secondary schools, as an example?
That's a great question. Thank you so much for the question. Thank you, Dave, for the intro. And thank you for this wonderful platform that we have, Cindy, and to your organization, because it's an honor to be with you and with this esteemed group of individuals. We in Jennings have a strong social justice core to what we do. So we first wanted to close the digital divide entirely. So we provided Chromebooks to every student, every family in need. We also provided hotspot connections for all of our families. We have 200 students, we have 3,000 students that we serve. We have about 200 students though that are at the pre-K age range / kindergarten age range. And that's the hardest age range to determine how much screen time you really want to give them exposure to. So we use the 9 network and help the 9 network PBS to create something called Room 9, which was coordinated lessons on Channel 9 with Elmo and with other figures that's on Channel 9, and with our own teachers doing TV lessons and ultimately being broadcast by television, which was much better. So we've used a mental or heart, head, and hand model. And so first, you want to connect with students with their heart by making individual phone calls and connections through Zoom or through Google Meets and Google Hangouts. And then after the individual connection or by TV with having your own teacher for pre-K, kindergarten, so forth, do a lesson on the screen with characters that they're familiar with because it touches your heart. There's some familiarity. Then you want to empower the head. So ultimately, we gave laptops to every senior to take home as a gift and have that were donated by corporations like Worldwide Technology, MasterCard, and a few others. And then we gave Chromebooks to everyone else that was not a senior. We understand brain research when we talk about the head. So connection for the heart and connectivity for the social justice. But then the research on the brain is this. We know that more than 1 hour of screen time has an impact on how your brain learns and how you actually feel, your mental health. So there's a good balance that you need of screen time and non-screen time, boredom and downtime for imagination versus screen time for actual powerful activities. So we took that into account, and we wanted to have about 2 hours per day of screen time for our middle school age ranges and maybe about 3 to 4 for high schoolers maximum, because the more you have per day, the more difficult it is on your mental health, your distractibility, your emotional stability. And so a lot of that screen time was on reconnecting with friends that they were abruptly disassociating with. So when you have screen time to offset the mental health illnesses or issues, you make it a heart thing of reconnecting them with friends that they couldn't otherwise see. So we really put a lot of time into thinking about connection, about mental health, about brain research, and about social justice, closing the digital divide.
Thank you, Art. Stacy, let's turn to you for a second here. Maryville University had a healthy percentage of virtual students even before COVID came upon us. Did that help the university shift? What tools did you already have set up? What did you all need to get in place quickly?
Good question. I also want to thank you all for having me on this panel today with, just like what Art said, an esteemed panel. I've learned a lot from you all. We had a chance to chat before now. So this is just furthering the conversation and really makes it real and easy to have this conversation. So thanks for having me. Yes, we have over 7,000 students that are in the online environment. So we were already using a lot of innovative technologies and apps to engage students in the virtual environment. We actually, in the classroom, use a lot of technology tools. So we were already familiar with this space and had a lot of expertise in this space. In our Digital World Initiative, we already give all of our undergrad students an iPad, and Maryville purchases apps for all of the students to use. We have specialized apps for different disciplines. And so students are already coming in understanding that they have to get a digital foundation at Maryville before they even get even deeper into their specialized fields. We have learning designers. So learning designers are a whole team set just aside for us developing active and engaging classrooms. So that's what you have to be really careful about in this digital environment at this point. It's not just a matter of taking a lecture and getting it to Zoom with your students and executing that lecture. It's truly about using new technologies and methods and pedagogy to engage students, because we have a lot of students with a very short attention span. So even on this call right now, we'll lose folks if we don't engage. And so hopefully we have an engaging topic, but at the same time, in school and education, you have to use different technologies. We have green screens that we use, so we actually can work out problems on screens in front of our students. We use a lot of different apps like Explain Everything, so that way we can do videos and actually write on a whiteboard at the same time. We use Padlet, where students can pick up their cell phone and tell us how they feel about a topic, let them create iMovies. We put them in the center of learning. So it's just so important that when we think about, because a lot of people are saying online learning, and we're using the term virtual learning because it's not just throwing things online. It's so important that we use various technologies to engage our students. Maryville, when I came, what drew me was the tech infrastructure. They have all of this infrastructure set up so that, you know, the students have their own Netflix server. So if you got to Netflix with a server of your own, you already know how education is executed over this infrastructure. So we're using breakout rooms for our students. We're using specialized apps. One thing that I've done is it's made it a lot more enriching is to invite partners in. So I'm working with TD Ameritrade. They worked on a project with my students because project-based learning is important in this environment too, so that they can collaborate, learn how to work together, and address those soft skills that all of the industry partners are talking about. And TD Ameritrade was in the classroom with me for 8 weeks last semester. After we, had to move into the online environment, they would have normally been in the classroom probably 2 or 3 times. But because we went virtual, it actually allowed us an opportunity to meet with them weekly for feedback to students on a weekly basis. So all that to say is Maryville definitely was ahead of the game. I'm so glad that I'm in that type of environment. And as people seek out their education, no matter where it is, because we can't handle all of them, that they're asking those questions. Are you, how's your technology? How's your infrastructure? Are you forward thinking? Do you have active learning? And what does that look like? And make sure that you do that, because a lot of universities were not prepared and they just basically, had to throw some lectures up, so.
Yeah, so it's so fascinating. And so Art's got our sort of early education through primary and secondary. Stacy's got our bachelor's and our sort of that age group and experience. And then Katherine, I know you're working with folks who are coming typically from a professional background, right?
Correct.
So tell us about the Workforce Center and what you all have seen in the midst of COVID and how you all have shifted.
Yes, thank you. St. Louis University has a workforce center. We are a training center, professional development center. We opened 8 years ago, and St. Louis University saw the change in higher education, and we saw the opportunity for professional development and corporate partnerships. So the Workforce Center partners, 80% of our business is with corporations. They use tuition assistance, training budgets, and then we do a lot of business with the state and veterans. And it's for the professional. A lot of our students already have their bachelor's or master's, and they're looking to learn skills and then quickly. A company wants you to go to training and they want you to come back in a week and have that skill. So we have both day and night training programs. Some companies' culture is to send their employees to day training and they do all their training during work hours. And then there's other company cultures where they invest in training, but it's off hours. And then we also do a lot of private group training for companies. Where we go to their site or we do virtual teams, and that's will lead into what how COVID impacted our business in the last 90 days. We actually saw a 30% increase in training and development because companies were like, okay, we're all home, we're working virtually. How can we take training and development and be motivating and get our people skills so they can get to the next level and be as high performing as possible? So it's been a very exciting time at the Workforce Center. We were virtual the whole time since we opened 8 years ago. So we had like 50% of our students were on ground and 50% were virtual. And we served the nation. We don't do a lot of international, but we're open to. But we served, whoever was needing training. We had companies that had virtual teams. So with COVID, we did see an immediate cancellation in day training. Obviously in corporate day training, people weren't getting together and going to SLU, or we weren't going to their facility. But in a matter of a couple weeks, we were able to change our schedule. And that's what makes the center so unique, is that we don't have terms. We start classes every single week, and our schedule is based on what the corporations are requesting. So it's what the job openings are. And so the skills are all in demand. We focus on cybersecurity, project management, data analytics, leadership, and we can customize it for any company. So COVID's been a challenge, but it's been a very rewarding time to help people upskill and meet their organization goals.
That's great.
Thanks.
And then Jessi, you are coming from sort of an even newer angle. There may be people on the line who aren't familiar with Launch Code. Do you want to give us the overview of Launch Code and then Coder Girls specifically, and what shifts you all have seen?
Yeah, so at our core, Launch Code's mission is to provide pathways to economic opportunity through filling the tech talent gap. And we approach that from two angles, right? So we have our education side, where we provide free training to people who want to pick up in-demand tech skills. And then we have our company side. And so we help people find jobs for free as well through our apprenticeship program. That's with our company partners in the region. Specifically, Coder Girl, the program that I manage, is one of a couple of programs that we offer at Launch Code. And it was started because there were women taking our original class, along with professional women in the area, who wanted to build their skills within in community with one another. And so Coder Girl kind of started as a meetup originally, and then has evolved into one of our full-fledged programs. But they all kind of operate the same way before COVID, right? In-person programming with professionals, teaching people the skills for the roles that they want to go into. And I would say that since COVID hit, we kind of caught both sides, like pros and cons of the effects of it. Like I would say, absolutely, in comparison to schools like Maryville and SLU, they were in the best positions, right? Where virtual learning was what they were already doing. For us, we were able to pivot quickly, right? Because kind of like Katherine just mentioned with the workforce, we don't go on a set timeline. We start our classes like when we kind of have some leniency of like pushing dates or extending when needed. And so we were able to do that and to like get Zoom set up as a course tool and engage our students and continue our courses that way. But I would say the cons of it, and I think a piece of this to me has to be why Launch Code developed our model to be in person, is just that open access, like online courses. I think MOOC has become like very like a hot word in education and higher education. While it's open access to people, it hasn't seen necessarily the same success as in-person classes. And so a key piece of Launch Code's mission was keeping that in-person component in attempts to kind of boost the success rates of people kind of who have this expanded access into programs like Launch Code. But I think what COVID, like how it most impacted our education and what our students were used to, was the community and course engagement fostered by like the in-person community. So like Stacy just mentioned, a online learning experience where you just take the lectures that were happening and put them online is not the same, right? Like the immediate feedback loop that our students got from like our mentors and instructors were gone, where you can see real time in person how people are reacting to the courses. We have students who their machines may be older, right? And so trying to run Zoom to listen to lecture while trying to look at another screen on your laptop to like log on to the course tools while also trying to engage in the chat. Like there's a lot happening there. And so like it's not the same type of education, and we've had to find different ways to ramp up course engagement. But specifically when it comes to Coder Girl, and back to that community piece, I think there's something to the feeling of feeling like a space was built out for you. That comes with in-person classes, that's gone now.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
So Dave, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so interesting. I wonder if we can touch on maybe at the end we'll like ping everyone's thoughts on like how do we make virtual education more
Compelling,
more personal. Like if as we're talking here, maybe as those things come into your mind, like I think examples will be really helpful because like I think we have a really cool cross section of the age ranges that we deal with and the contexts, and like I think learning from each other, like hey, we tried this and we tried that. I think that's a really neat opportunity. So I want to ask another question here, Katherine. SLU has a number of online programs already. Can you tell us a bit about what was online before and then what it shifted looked like? Was there like a market? Was it like 30% tech and then now it's like 90% tech, or like some trends like that in the programming? Oh, I think you're on mute if you're.
Thank you. I want to be sensitive to everybody else. Sorry about that. Yeah, St. Louis University has a School for Professional Studies that's been online since 2008, which really has been, they have bachelor's and master's programs. And Tracy Chapman, who was supposed to be on this call today, is the dean of that school, and she also oversees distance education. So we saw a lot of, we expanded our summer and winter session programming already. The summer, we expanded it with online, and we were really set. We were in good standing to do that. Collaboratively, we're working with other people on campus in distance education. The students, the traditional students are not having as much trouble with the, adopting. So they are very agile and flexible. We have a lot of different technologies. I know, we're trying to, get some hybrid solutions so we can get that more engaged feeling when the students come back in the fall. So these are challenges we're all facing.
We had an audience question, and I'm interested in the answer, especially from Art. I'm the parent of 3 school-age little, 2 kindergarten and 1 almost 3rd graders. So have Are any of your organizations thinking about doing a hybrid model in the fall? That, I know a lot of other universities are sort of thinking about doing an online in-person trading off.
Yeah, so as a leader, I want to live in the domain of being a thermostat and changing the climate. So I'm not just thinking about it; we're doing it. We currently have students in school as the first district in a highly impacted COVID area in the highest zip code in the state of Missouri to actually resume school and to reopen. And so all students and families in our district will have at least 2 to 3 options. Every child and parent can choose a 100% virtual option and can stay in it for a quarter to a semester. And if they opt to go back to in person, then they can do that at the end of the semester at high school and then at the quarter at elementary and middle school. So 100% virtual is an option for all. Then secondly, and where we divide, we've closed the digital divide, so we will provide devices and hotspots and so forth. The second option is all pre-K through third graders will have the right to come every day. And it's my job to make sure that they will not receive or transfer COVID. If they come with COVID and do not, if they make it through the doors past our screening, then the practices inside the building will be so strong as they have been for the past 2 weeks that there will be no transmission. This includes like 13 square feet distance, not just 6, 30 square feet per person, 1 to 10 classroom ratios, where our max is 12 students, maximum in a room that's a minimum of 700 square feet. So that gets you well above the 30 square foot per person to more like 40 square feet and so forth. But to the question, so again, 100% virtual, daily for pre-K through 4th grade, and then an A-day, B-day schedule, A-B schedule for 4th grade through 12th grade, where every student will come every other day. This reduces your building occupancy to 50%, which allows you to have approximately 60 square foot of personal space in all directions. And I use square feet because you want all directions on a 2-dimensional plane, not just 6 feet. You want 30 square feet or more. So we have about 50 square feet or more with that procedure. We have screeners where students, staff, and parents do a virtual online screener before they come into the building. Then we have them temperature checked and screened upon arrival. I'm a contact tracer from Johns Hopkins training that's required by all of New York's contact tracers. So I know that the symptoms for children are different than symptoms for adults. The 2 high-risk categories for children are difficulty breathing, or the 3 high-risk categories for children are difficulty breathing. They are a cough, and then lastly, no taste and no smell. The low impact risk symptoms for COVID for children are fevers. If the child has a fever, they likely don't have COVID. A headache, that's not likely COVID. Diarrhea, and other areas that are on the CDC list, those are low impact and likely not to be COVID for children, because children manifested through Kawasaki disease and other type of symptoms. So we have a list of a 3-check process: the self-screener, then the screener upon arrival by a nurse, and then the classroom teacher screener. That's the same questions for a 3-point validation that gets emailed to the leaders, myself, and to the nurses. Isolation rooms, which we don't call them that, we call them care rooms, where anyone who has any symptoms go to the care room, and we have baby monitors viewing in the care room so that it's only those individuals, and then with the monitoring of a nurse and an office nurse aide and more. So that is our plan. We were fortunate to help write the plan for the St. Louis area region, and then I was on that committee, and I was on the committee for the state to write the plan from MSBA for reopening schools for the state of Missouri. And we of course had our plan written first in April and May, and then implementing it in June, July, with in-person classes. So we'll have a white paper study come out with our findings. And the bottom line is that attendance will be sporadic, because we've shifted from everybody must come to school every day and get perfect attendance to everybody must not come to school every day that you have any symptoms. Therefore, please don't show up, be you teacher, parent, or student. So you may have 30 to 60% of your students absent on any given day because of fear of the uprise in COVID, because of being around someone with COVID the previous day who then was confirmed to have received it, or for having a symptom. So schools will look quite different, and things will be much different for at least the next 2 years into 22-23 school year. So I separate this into 3 categories for those people who are parents thinking about this. You have BC, before COVID, which is approximately February 2020 and before. You have DC, during COVID, which is approximately March 2020 all the way through May 2022 or June 2022. And then you'll have AC, after COVID, which will be approximately July 2022 to 23. Why that far out? Well, it's going to take literally 2 years before a few things happen, before there's herd immunity of 70, 80% or more individuals who's had it and recovered from it and have some personal immunity, or a shot like a flu shot where you inject someone with it and then help them get well and overcome it. It's going to take about 2 years before that is created, tested on humans, and then trusted by humans to take and be okay after doing it, and then distributed to humans so that everyone gets it. And then a vaccine, to create the vaccine, even if it's done by January of 2021, then to test it on humans to make sure they don't get more harm than before, then to distribute it equally and equitably after it's safe, and to go over the psychological fear of, I don't trust vaccines. We know historically what's been done to people with vaccines, so why should I take that? That's going to take into 2022 before that becomes the norm. So education will be quite different for a long period of time. And that's how we're approaching it. So we are prepared and we are ready to be servant leaders to educate people in person during COVID, DC, but also to provide the option of remote learning and virtual learning during COVID, because AC has to be better than BC. I coined BC as before COVID for that reason. It's the Stone Ages. And so we need new 21st century essential learning skills like perseverance, problem solving, grit, and courage, to the degree that you got to walk into a situation that could kill you as a teacher, essentially. Even though not one child has died in the state of Missouri since COVID, out of the approximately 1,095 in the state of Missouri, more females than males, about 540 females to 505 males, which is unique to other states and countries. But not one has been a child from age 0 to 19. So that doesn't mean that it can't happen. It just means that the teachers are more prone to being at risk and needing more courage to do the job. But we must be public servants, and we're here to serve, and so we will do that safely.
Awesome.
That's great. What about other hybrid models? Do the other institutions have something in place?
We are at Maryville. There was a task force. I won't get into all of the details, but there has been a task force built, and we have several options. So we have hybrid. We'll have the opportunity for students to come to classes 1 day a week as opposed to the 2 days where they're taking turns. And at the same time, we have students zoomed in so that they can be a part of the class at the same time. So we'll have an actual synchronous hybrid model where students are actually in the classroom, but they are in the classroom from home. We have some online plus, where we might extend some class time so that students can get deeper into the topic and have more time with it. But so I won't get into all the different options, but we first and foremost, it's all about student safety and students and parents feeling comfortable about their child being on campus. And we've gone way, of course, according to the CDC guidelines, but way above to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and that we are doing the right thing so that students can continue learning.
That's great. Great. Yeah, I'll throw in my editorial comment. The plexiglass industry is booming in the meantime, right? So this is a really interesting question. Let's talk about business models, right? There's been a lot of talk in the media around what disruption COVID might cause in higher ed, specifically around what a traditional degree costs today versus what it cost 50 years ago, and whether the ROI with the increased cost is justifiable. So pundits like Scott Galloway have been in the news, and there's a lot of analysts talking about it. What do you all think we'll see in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you think that COVID will change that trajectory? What is going to happen as far as disruption in business model with education?
Stacy, you go first.
So I know that there is a huge debate about ROI on a degree versus not degree. And it's a big debate. It's a hot topic. It always, more recently, it has been, especially since tech has been at the forefront of most of what we do. I will say that I value education. During my years of educating and parenting, I realized that there are different paths for different individuals. Different students learn in different ways. One ROI might be justifiable for one person, but not for another. What I do believe that COVID has done has helped to people to realize that they can learn in virtual environments, that learning can change the trajectory of your life, even learning in a virtual environment. When we've had no option but to learn this way, people realize, oh my God, there's some pretty cool things happening in this environment. And I learned something. Hopefully people are learning things today that they can take away, even if it's one nugget that you've learned something in a virtual environment. And guess what? You didn't have to show up and sit in a seat to do that. You can do it from home. My son was not a traditional student. I was like, I'm an educator. What the heck are we doing here? But he has used this time to take some online courses where he independently studied software development, and now he's pivoting his career. However, there are a large amount of students who need structure, who need instructor-led education, who need accountability, who need to help them how to learn how to become self-disciplined. And so, you know, that's why I value education, because there will always be a group of students who can't just log on, learn, and go change their job. I do believe that for the business model, that our institutions have to partner with organizations to determine what skills are needed, and then build degrees around those skills. That means that when a student walks out of the classroom, when they walk across the stage and get their degree, when they finish the program at Launch Code, when they finish the training at SLU, that they are walking into a business, an organization with the skills that the business needs them to have. How cool, how does that feel as ROI at that point? It feels like I invested in something that let me walk out of the door and have the skills that I needed to start this work today and to be of value to this organization. So we use my adjunct, what I call extended faculty, to inform our curriculum, to tell us what it is that's happening in business that students need to know when they walk out of our programs. And when they go to work, they see the value immediately, because they say, oh, we learned this in the Cyber Fusion Center in Maryville, or in the nursing department where they use all of the latest technologies. They walk in and they know these technologies and they say, we learned this paid off for me. So we pride ourselves in that project learning model and that collaborative model. So that means that the person that sat at home and learned on their own, while they learned and they got what they needed to make that shift, some may struggle because they haven't had the opportunity to socialize with others, to work on collaborative projects, to learn how to develop some of those soft skills that really is what industry is asking for now. They want smart students who know how to learn, who know how to contribute to the organization with their technical skills. And that's what college and degrees provide. So I always side on the side of the 4-year, but at the same time, remember, I have a son who did not. So I completely understand all of the different models that are necessary. When people are saying education is over in the 4-year model, I think it is pivoting. It looks different. We now have hybrid models. We now have partnerships with organizations. So it will look different. It will absolutely look different, but will always be necessary in my mind.
Awesome.
Retweet.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying, like I really agree with what Stacy mentioned, and I think it forces all institutions and organizations to think about the way that our business models may or may not have been student-centered. And it allows students to now really sit and think, okay, this looks different than how I was educated, that like that the next step would be. And so now people are able to reflect in a positive way on, okay, what should my next step be, or what is the best model that fits what I need or what I'm looking for.
So along those lines, Jessi, I know that you all are, training people across a broad spectrum of educational background, professional background. And my understanding is your model is that you're reliant upon employers, right, who are funding the training and in some cases apprenticeships in order to get tech talent in their doors. And as you know, most of my career has been in technology, and the tech talent gap is a huge issue. It's the first topic we will talk about at Prepare's conference. Our first section is on workforce development, this entire, this issue. So what are you seeing in terms of the employers coming to you, and has that shifted in COVID?
Yeah, so definitely, and because of COVID, it has shifted. I think one thing that our model and any like tech training or workforce development model relies on is for the ecosystem to buy in and be supportive of what's happening to get the region to where it needs to be or where it wants to go. And so at Launch Code, when COVID like really ramped up, a lot of companies in the area and nationally had hiring freezes. So we of course saw the effects of that, right? We definitely saw a lower number of job placements come through from our company partners. Through all that, we were still able to place people into jobs, so that like there's still like was some spark of hope there. To date, we've been able to place 139 people into roles this year, which is like still something, right? And we're still moving. And now I think we've gotten to a point where we're seeing it start to ramp back up as employers now have had to switch from, okay, this is no longer like a defense mode. We have to plan as if this is the way our companies have to operate. And I think one kind of mission pivot we made on the hiring side that was really interesting when this happened was, for the first time, we pivoted our model in an extent to, one, help our employer partners, but also some of our students' focus no longer became, I need to gain these skills to switch careers. It became, I need a check to survive because I was just laid off. And so, for example, we worked with MasterCard to fill a lot of open call center roles that they had. And so that was just like one of the ways that we had to pivot and kind of look towards new opportunities to keep moving forward.
Wow. And then Katherine, same question for you. I know that you all sort of, your client in some ways is corporations and large organizations. Have their needs changed, and have the ways that you're partnering with them changed?
Yes. As St. Louis University as a whole, our mission is have industry partnerships, and we go to the companies and ask, how can we help you, whether it's talent, whether it's research, whether it's education. And so during this time, we were very aggressive in understanding our corporate clients. We met with them through Zoom or WebEx. We asked, what are the needs? Where can we help in the gaps? And where can we customize things? That was really important. And to know that, yeah, we're here. How can we work with you? How can we help make a motivating environment in these virtual teams? But one of the challenges that we did face and are still facing is that in the corporate sector, every company has a different, tool that they're using, and we have to be flexible and learn their system to be able, like our adjunct instructors are amazing. They're our product. We know our instructors and teachers and faculty are. They have to be flexible, because you can't expect 20 people from another company learn WebEx when they're using Teams. So that is one thing that working with a company and asking those things early on make the whole engagement so much better. But we ask them, what are you looking for in an education partner, and how can we fill those gaps? From the Workforce Center side, we ask, what were your plans? How do they need to adjust, and where can we help you? And it's been going very well on a private side, but the public schedule is a quick way for people to engage and keep their skills going. So.
Awesome.
That's great. Let's talk real quick about long-term impacts of this. So you talked, that was really interesting hearing you talk about, like, okay, we're going to be in this DC, that's my initials, the during COVID period for a year or two. So how does that impact, what do you think long-term effects will be on kids in spending their formative years, large portions of their formative years so young? Like, what will that mean for them coming out of this? Will they be different in ways? Will they be better or worse suited to certain things because of this? Will they have certain fears? Yeah. What do you think about that?
Definitely. Yes and no. I love the Charles Dickens tales. It was the best of times and the worst of times. So I'll say yes and no. Children will be different in the long run, but children are different in general. If you just think about the current Generation X versus millennials versus Gen Z versus Gen Alpha, which is the elementary age students, they're different. And you can see that from a variety of reasons, from protests in the streets to other things that's occurring in the suites when you have intergenerational leaders like at Amazon or Facebook and so forth. They are different because they see the world differently because of what they were born into. So I had to take a step back before I answer that question. Let me first take the step back to say, okay, so what is the purpose of K through 12 public education? And very rarely will you ever hear an educator or superintendent give it in like five words. College preparation, career readiness, and character development. So college, careers, and character. That's what the purpose of public education is. It's college and careers for apprenticeships, the apprenticeship, and this has been throughout all history. And then college got added, but ultimately that's added as a version of being useful to society and ultimately being an educated electorate for democracy to continue. And then character development, the character of the individual and the character of the nation being the democracy we have. So college, career readiness, and character development is the purpose. So now, having said that, during COVID, DC, we have remote internships for high schoolers that Lenovo and KPMG allowed us to have, because if you literally can't come into work or are told not to, then you have to have an essential learning skill of how to be a remote learner. And the public school has a responsibility to do that because career readiness is what we do, one of the 3 C's for the purpose of education: college, career, and character. So ultimately, so then how does that look differently for the elementary kid and others? So a few things happen. First, the educational impact. Parents found it hard to facilitate virtual learning with their children on a daily basis. Some became frustrated. Some were like, wow, I really appreciate my teacher for putting up with my child because it takes a lot of patience. So just that family, parent, child interaction dynamic is going to have an impact on the child appreciating school more, just like the parent appreciates school more. And really, some of them were crying because they couldn't go, which is rare. I saw private school kids going to the school on the first day of the 1920 school year, and they were literally crying because they had to come back, not crying because they had to go or because they wanted to go. So that will be one change, an appreciation, the impact of education. Secondly, students burnt out a lot sooner in April and May because online learning takes a degree of concentration and staying with it and looking at clues on a little bitty screen, and it's a higher level of brain activity and stimulation sometimes than the things we were accustomed to. So that will have a physiological impact as well as a mental, emotional health impact if we don't balance it right. Students, some strived and thrived and came alive because they were introverts and felt like they were crowded out by the extroverts in a physical school, but now they had the power of the screen, the protection of a screen, and they had an equal playing ground. So they came alive, did more work, did more things. Some students needed non-traditional learning hours, like they needed to come to school or wake up and do learning at 10 o'clock, like we did with virtual learning, started at 10 and it ended at 2. Well, they were wide awake by 10, but if you try to get them to come to school at 7:30, they're sleepwalking. And so that has an impact. The sleep schedule, the circadian rhythms of someone's automatic sleep schedule versus non when you're ready to go to sleep. Some turned in assignments at 11:59 p.m. because that was the deadline. When you're virtual, you're like, get it in before the next day, 11:59 p.m. We got a lot of assignments in on time like that, more than we would have at a normal deadline. More behavioral modification programs, software programs like Dojo and things of that nature that give you incentives for when you click the right thing and do the right thing, say the right thing virtually. All of that will have an impact. And then we haven't gotten to the emotional impact and the mental health, even though I said a lot of that, like screen time leads to anxiety, leads to depression when you're at the 7 hours or more per day, or even 4 hours or more per day. So you want to avoid more than 4 hours per day of just direct screen time unless it's play time. And so that there is a small difference. So the impact will be a struggle of moving from 7 out of 10 people in America experiencing trauma in BC before COVID. Now DC, I would say 9 to 10 individuals, including children, have been traumatized during DC. What is trauma? Having insecurity of where you live, lack of security of who will be with you, lack of security of where you will be allowed to go or not go, fear of life. We all have that. That's a standard DC reality now. And so we will change, become more empathetic in the days and years to come, because we are all facing some degree of trauma. And then we'll see what is possible in AC. Having learned now how to live more empathetically, AC has a real bright future for humanity. And let me put it in this soundbite. To our graduates from kindergarten and from 8th grade to high school, and from high school to college, I said this: when you were young, you learned how to count 1, 2, 3. But now, during this DC reality, you're learning what counts. And that's you and that's me. We as humans count. And that's the big change.
Very cool. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Katherine, Stacy, Jessi, if you have thoughts on that, or there's also a related audience question that came in. An anonymous attendee says, have you seen a shift in students' emotional or mental bandwidth in response to the current events? How do your educators accommodate the dampened attention spans? Katherine, do you have anything to address that?
With our demographics, they're adult learners, and all of our training is virtual and asynchronous. So we are very engaged, and it's no different than what we were doing the last 7 years. So we haven't seen a change in that. I don't know if Stacy could speak more from the traditional student. I'm talking more from the professional student.
We absolutely have. Even starting in March, in April, when we went to the virtual environment, that was a complete shift for all of our students who were on ground. So students went home to environments that some left in order to get the education that they need in the way that they needed it. And so now they were back in their own environment, struggling through education, not in a way that they had planned to do that. So of course, that took an emotional toll on many of our students and us. So we fortunately have what we call a life coach model at Maryville, which I absolutely love. I remember going to Flo Valley when I first got out of high school, and we had advisors, and advisors would be these scary people that you walk into their office and they had the check mark whether you completed all the classes on the sheet. And I went through education as an educator, seeing that sheet and seeing those offices, to arrive at Maryville and find out about a life coach model, which completely surrounds our students. And they get surveys before they even get to campus, so we can find out how they learn and what needs they have. And we just attend to the whole student. So as you guys know, as educators, we find ourselves in counseling positions, and we work with our students in various different ways depending on that student. but to always be able to fall to a life coach and say, hey, let's chat about this student, or this student seems to be having problems or issues right now. And that life coach actually knows the student. So the life coach works with the student for the first 2 years that they're at Maryville. And then in the last 2 years, because we're in the on the academic side, we actually work with them so we can start with the internships and making sure they have plans on what they want to do when they grow up and all of that. So if something happens even in that 3rd or 4th year, and I see a student struggling mentally or you know, outside of the classroom, then I loop in the life coach and we kind of have a conversation about how to assist that student. So I don't have to be the expert, because as teachers and educators, we always feel like, well, I got to make sure that they that I can help them through this issue. But I like to lean on the licensed folks who you know, really can help our students. So that has been a tremendous help for me, because in a different environment, I was everything to that student. And in this one, we have things in place that really can help these students during this time. It's a rough time for all of us. So just think about the student who is figuring out who they are and what they want to be and what their life will be. We kind of maybe 3/4 of the way figure that out ourselves. So just imagine adding all that on top, and you know that students are struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some other attendee questions, audience questions. Pradeep Das, hi Pradeep, asks, virtual education can leapfrog educating the underserved. What are the systemic obstacles related to the digital divide that we really need to resolve as a community or as a society?
Oh, perfect. I was getting ready to add that to my last comment too, that I'm struggling. Of course, my dissertation was on the digital divide. So, so this has been brought to the forefront. I'm so excited that it is at the forefront of everybody's mind now. My work was completed in 2015. And I've been yelling it from the rooftops since 2010. And for us to be in 2020 and a pandemic had to happen for this conversation is infuriating, but exciting at the same time. So in Missouri, 36% of our students don't have adequate access, 36%, and 25 don't have devices. 12% of teachers don't have adequate access, and 3% don't have devices. And we're talking about educating the underserved without technologies that they need in order to. So while people are saying that it's an equalizer, we are so far from that. To me, a basic need is the hardware, software. So I always say they need to be educated on this software. So we can't say that we've closed the divide because we've given somebody a laptop and a hotspot. Because when you drop that off in the home of someone who's never experienced that technology, they are no further along. So I've been thinking about a concept, digital citizenship, where we each hold ourselves accountable to somebody who has not experienced these technologies. That my grandmother that needs to talk to her doctor using telehealth, that I'm her citizen and I'm going to help her talk to her doctor in a virtual atmosphere. If a student who came from a school district who wasn't afforded the opportunity to use these technologies are now being thrown into Maryville saying, hey, technology, 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 use it. They need a digital citizen to get them up to speed on things that they missed in the K-12 environment. So it will be an equalizer when we get access and equity and digital equity and access covered. I don't think we can address the education gap without addressing the digital divide.
How do we address it as individuals, or an organization like Prepare, or the folks on the call? Like, what action items can we give individuals?
Yeah, I'll let somebody else talk. I can talk about this forever.
So yeah, there's a few things, and I had to reply because my sister Stacy mentioned something that was important. So I shared that we closed the digital divide, and that took a lot of things. in addition to a hotspot and the Chromebook, and it took one-on-one life coaching. That's the essential piece. And we're one of the people that Stacy and her organizations is implemented the life coaching model from our middle school through our high school, through Maryville. That's the most essential piece, because it's like giving someone a device like, a clock, but you don't know how to tell time. That doesn't work. And then we're going to ask them to create a clock or to create standard time in the COVID reality, and they don't know how to tell time. That's the answer in a soundbite to how complex this is. So they need a life coach on how to standardize time, let alone build a clock, and then of course tell time with those tools, techniques, and talents that life coaches can give. So, but what can we do? Each of us have corporate influence, and corporations have a corporate responsibility to then do something, to either give mentorship, to give money, or to add to their woman power and man power, to like train someone up to each one reach one. So if you are in a corporation, look at the 3 M's plus a W, that is mentorship, that is money, and that is woman power and manpower, to basically create a mini you that's a better mini you or mini me. That's number one. Number two, we have the Heroes Act that's going to be on the floor in the end of July and the 1st of August. And I'm thankful to be able to help advise our U.S. Senator on what to put in that. But that's bottom line is that's $3.3 trillion that's supposed to go towards helping to meet the needs, both on the infrastructure and broadband and rapid nasal testing that I'm suggesting $600 million for 24-hour or even 5-minute testing of COVID like the president has, so we can really go back to or go forward to AC, never go back to BC, go forward. So bottom line is, lobby, advocate, speak to your senators, your governor, your House of Representatives. Lastly, I want to put an exclamation point on what my sister Stacy said as far as the civil right of the digital divide. If education is a civil right and you don't have a means to it because you don't have the liberty to leave your house, then the digital technology becomes a means to an end to the civil right of education, which is in every state constitution. Digital technology divides. It's not in the Constitution yet, nor is the access. But the bottom line is, if we don't get the technology right in order to educate, then it may very well become a constitutional issue for just the technology alone. And so my last soundbite will be this. In a COVID area of DC, when people are reducing their liberties, they're limiting their liberties in order to extend their life. That means quarantining in their house and staying in more and working remotely, which is a privilege, to Katherine's point about why professional learners haven't had any change. That's because they're the most top privileged group in the education spectrum. You're the professional learner. Very few people get to do that. 4 out of 5 Blacks are essential workers. 5 out of 6 Latinos are essential workers. That means they're not in the professional learning group. They're not that privileged. So many people are limiting their liberty in order to lengthen their life, alliteration. And others are seeing knees on necks and saying, I'm willing to give my life in order to lengthen and expand people's liberties. And so those are 2 critical categories that technology is in the midst of all that. And we wouldn't know about a knee on the neck without technology of a cell phone that made it seen upon the world when many people were in isolation in their homes. But there is a symbiotic relationship between the 2. And DC is going to be very different, and because of that dichotomy. But we have to be better than we were before yesterday or before in BC in order to make it to AC. So that's my closing comments.
I like it.
I think that's really interesting. I'll just editorialize real quickly. I used to work in the electric utility space. In these the regulatory models for electricity, I think there's a lot of discussion that I'm hearing about broadband and internet access just becoming a regulated utility. People even go so far as to say, should Twitter and Facebook and these social media outlets where kind of democracy and conversation and town hall takes place, that's even a step further. But it is not a large mental leap to say, hey, water utilities, electric utilities, they have policies and regulations to say, we are the server of last resort. If somebody is going to die because their heat goes out or they don't have fresh water, like the regulatory model, the cost structure has to account for that and get it to those people. And we don't let them die. We don't let them perish. We don't let them flounder. We have the frameworks and the architectures to set that up and be successful at it. And we've been doing that. So, I think it's interesting just to see, just like we're doing here, all these people from different perspectives. I think we're all learning from each other and like, oh, we approach these problems this way. I know I am. I think it's interesting to be able to look at that. And, other things that have come up, like apprenticeship models, like the trades and unions have been using apprenticeship models. And so I wonder if there are things, trace those paths and like look at like, those are very mature processes. And so we're kind of all trying to maybe recreate that in the realm of the knowledge worker. Maybe there are things that we can learn there. I just think that's really interesting. I just echo the comments that you all just made. It really makes sense to me that, digital technology and broadband and access, we should think of it the same way that we think about electricity and water in our society now.
Yeah.
And Dave and Cindy, for organizations, you have to think about the tech talent pipeline as well. If we're excluding 36% of Missourians from technology, and you all at Prepare.AI are saying, we need people to talk about artificial intelligence, you've just lost 36% of Missourians because they've never been exposed to tech talent. So what you can do as organizations is invest in those areas, invest in those students, get out there in front of them and explain what these technologies are on a basic level so they at least have some exposure to them. So I go out to one of that 36% to talk about AI, and I've lost them. They've never experienced it. We have to start in education in the K-12 atmosphere. They have to start in kindergarten understanding what geospatial is. And then by the time you show up as an organization and have invested time and resources into them understanding how they can help you as tech talent, you got 36% more.
Yeah.
And I know our time is getting close, but I love what Stacy said. So I just want to put meat on the bones in case there's a doubter out there. We've had seventh graders come and learn AI, and high schoolers get taught it by Georgia Tech for the past 4 years. And our elementary kids go to MasterCard to see it and to learn it and see it for the past 4 years, and those babies are soaking it up like it's fresh water. They're like, we've been ready for this. This is the world we were born into. You old folks don't know about it, and you're keeping us back. So not only is it possible, it's us that's in the way. So right on that, Stacy, right on.
Well, that's awesome. We have another audience question, and this is similar or related. Stacy mentioned focusing on identifying career opportunities and paths sooner. And I know we've talked a lot in the workforce development sort of in our prep and planning for those conversations around changing the question for kids from stop saying like, what are you going to do when you grow up, and start saying, what do you like to do? And because, I mean, 2 years is a long time to be in a job now, especially if you're in technology. So along those lines, Art, I think this is for you. Are districts looking for technologies that will impact career readiness, and or like, how are you helping kids feel empowered about the places that they will go after they leave you? And how are you equipping them better? Oh, you're on mute.
That's a great question. So first, I have to say that that's a great question, and I think it comes from a good friend of mine. So I think, so when I came back from Silicon Valley, having created like the Springboard Initiative, which you can Google, where 100,000 brown and black people learn how to do Ruby on Rails and Python in order to do back-end web design for housing and others. I then wanted to implement that career model into my district, and we have 7 career pathways with credentials like Cisco, CCENT, and CompTIA A+, and so forth. And we've had 100% graduation for 4 years in a row, and career college placement and so forth. But the bottom line is school districts need help. And I think Bill Mitchell is a great person who can help with some software that lets every child have a career pathway for those districts that are just starting on it. Those type of software supports are essential, because it took me literally being in industry to see the significance of this type of this processing, and then putting it in a system took some time and so forth. So people need to lean out to partners, reach out to universities, reach out to organizations like Ms. Wicox, so that they can teach you how industry needs these thinkers. And then school superintendents and principals have to give away at least 10% of their time, because that's the more essential learning. Once they figure it out, they'll say, take 30%, because the kids will learn so much more. And so, like I said, some educators have to move out of the way with BC practices. And really, we have something called 21st century skills. And if you were to look at that today and during COVID reality, you'll be like, this is so archaic, like communicate. Oh, okay. I mean, come on, let's talk about Finsta, a fake Instagram account. Now that's communication. Now that's where the kids are, and so it's like, come on, get out of the way, learn, be true learners, and then do better. So career pathways are essential. And I'd say that college is a means to an end towards a career and productive citizenship. So if you haven't helped the kid write a real life plan, then as an education institution, you haven't done your job, because education is a means to an end. You're going to go somewhere and do something with it. So I agree. People need support. And that's a good point.
Awesome. All right. We are almost at the end of our time. I am going to ask one question of all of you, and you each get like 1 minute to answer, and we're going to be timing you. Not really. So, one of our missions at Prepare is really to make AI and technology less scary, less intimidating, more accessible. And, in the context of COVID, that becomes a whole new thing and new questions. So this isn't necessarily a tech question, but what I would love to hear from you all is, what is the one silver lining that you see coming out of this as it relates to how we are educating our citizens? And let's see, I'll start with Stacy. We'll go counterclockwise.
I think the silver lining is the new and innovative ways people are doing business and education. It excites me when I think about Natasha's Gin Room. They are now doing education about gin online. You go pick up your package. Not that I've done this or anything like this. Somebody told me that you could go pick up a package from them, you log on to Instagram, you listen to an expert on the topic of gin, and you learn something. Natasha's would have never thought to incorporate this model, because everybody showed up on their patio enjoying each other, which I do miss, but it has given them an innovative way to do business. The silver lining is now our students have to think differently about business. And our students have to think about those new business models to bring in revenue for these organizations, whether it's a gin room or an accounting firm or whatever that institution is. They now can't just say, let's go in, implement a model and find out where they need to improve. Now you have to come up with new, innovative ways, thinking innovative and differently completely about how people are going to do business. This is an interruption, and that's the silver lining for me. It's interrupting everything. It's making it exciting again. I always say, I wish we could get away from these chairs all facing the front, looking at the teacher, and good night, it's happening. And it's because of this. So I would think that the silver lining is that everything is changing, and a lot of it is in a good way.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, I never thought of this until now, but the word in entrepreneurship and innovation is disruption. And boy, I mean, this has been a disruption. Yes. So, Katherine, how about you?
Well, I've looked at this disruption as opportunity, and I really think it has helped it's really forcing corporations to look at talent and what we need. and also on the academic side. It's really propelling us to give quality education, and it's creating more change. So I can't echo enough what Stacy has said. I think it's exciting for our region because we have such great academic partners and corporations in our region, and our goal is to really grow our region in the tech talent and corporate partnerships and K-12. I mean, we all need to be aware of the mission that we have to our community. So I look at it as the silver lining is the opportunity, and I'm thankful for change and for the quality time I've been able to have. It's funny, you don't get to eat with your kids. And now I have a 17, 18, and 19-year-old, and I actually have had dinner with them quite a few times a week. So I'm looking at all the quality time, but the opportunity is for us to all come together with the change. Thanks.
Love it. Art, how about you?
I think it could be summed up in one word: equity. Before this, people were able to teach to the middle, act to the middle, and traditional capitalism applied, where there are winners and there are losers, and there's early starters, there's leaders, there's laggards, and so forth. And that was before COVID. Adequate education, and just disperse it, and those who get it. This demands equity. In order to even see who you saw before, you have to move at the speed of the need, at the level of need. And that is the most refreshing thing in my lifetime. Never in my life, and in many others, had any privileged group had to depend on the most oppressed group in order to just survive. And so you have custodians being called essential. Who would have thought that a cleanup person could kill you if they don't come to work? I love it. Oh, I love that. I don't care if you're Donald Trump or if you're Ronald McDonald at McDonald's. Your business is closed down if you don't have an essential worker. That is the most refreshing piece of Americanism that we should be saying, yeah, now this is what America should really be like, where we are all essential, we're in it together, and if you don't care about the trash man or the trash woman, and you don't care about payroll, and you don't care about the first responder who is essential, then you don't care about yourself, and you don't care about America. That's the greatest silver lining. I got friends who were privileged, and now they're oppressed, even with their privilege, and they're like, what is this reality? I'm like, this is home for me. I've always had to live like this. It's so welcome home. Welcome home. That's the most refreshing thing. It's called equity with a capital E. Yeah.
Amen. Jessi, we're gonna end with you.
That is pressure. For me, honestly, I think the silver lining is that this builds on work of people like Stacy, right? Like, I don't think anyone can ignore anymore the fact that digital access is, whether they want to just say the words outright or not, digital access is a civil right. And we, from like the way the world has developed and experiences we've had before, we know that when we approach that, we have to do it equitably, and it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. We have to consider the needs of people in the communities that we're trying to reach and serve. Like for art in the Jennings district, Chromebooks and iPads work perfectly for getting these kids connected to what they need to learn in schools. For Launch Code, there are technologies that are inaccessible by a Chromebook and iPads. And so you like, even down to like the tools people are provided with, you have to consider what people need and like be willing to do that, not just to serve you, but for people to meet basic necessities. And that can't be ignored anymore. I think that's what COVID has highlighted.
Awesome. Well, this was such an interesting session. I can't thank you all enough for taking time and giving us your time. It's so generous. Thank you everyone for joining us. And again, you will be hearing from us very soon about our fall conference, as well as our next series of webinars. So have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.